HomeSide Chats. This is Andrea French, Executive Director for TAG, Transportation Advocacy Group. In today's episode, we're joined by Texas State Senator Carol Alvarado. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, love your Houston Astros.
Oh yeah.
There. Hey, you know, we got to do what we got to do to stay in the spirit as much as possible. So just wanted to check in with you and see how you're doing and what the days of a Texas State Senator now look like.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm wearing this because I really miss baseball right now.
I agree.
I'm used to being at the games or at least watching them on TV. But and thank you to all the TAG community who tune in to watch this, and hope everyone is doing well. These are very busy times. I mean, I start off with conference calls in the morning, and they go very late. And my whole sleep pattern and eating pattern is upside down, and I hear that from a lot of people. I mean, sometimes I look up and it's 3 or 4 o'clock. Oh, and I haven't eaten yet. So, so maybe this is like a dieting, if you will. But there's so much information to take in. Conference calls, either with Senate colleagues, with Lieutenant Governor, with the governor, with our local leaders, with the White House, with healthcare providers. And then the task is to get that information out to the community, to our constituents.
Right. So thank you for being so genuine about the fact that it is a lot of upside down days, right? And I think we wake up every day and whew, okay, so deep breath, and we keep working in good faith. And you know, a lot of times it's a moving target, right? And so everybody's experiencing things in their own way. And certainly to our leaders you are absolutely right. Not only do you have to be a part of those information sessions, but you have to make sure that you can disseminate it. And that's hard right now.
And you have to disseminate the right information, fact check it, and rely on good sources. And that's what we tell people, especially in getting stimulus checks or being mindful of any type of scams that may come their way, whether it's on email or texting on the phone or you know, in the mail. We want to make sure that people have accurate information. That's why we stress to listen to your officials, listen to the people that you know that are in official capacity, and just be mindful, be extra cautious during this time.
Right, absolutely. And I think, you know, we're over a month now, and in some ways we've settled into this new normal, and now the conversations have started talking about reopening. And I almost wish we picked a different phrase, because I think it means something different to each person. And if ever a moment there was when information could get misinterpreted or misconstrued, right, it seems as if this conversation about reopening is very much like that right now. And so I would ask if you could share kind of your views on what you're seeing at the state level, the local level, and what makes sense right now for people to really take in and absorb.
Sure. I think doing things incrementally and slowly is the right way to go. The question is when. I am concerned that we quite haven't hit our peak yet. And I think, you know, maybe that's around the corner. So, you know, we have to work with all the officials, with the governor, with our local officials who have put in some type of, you know, orders, and then you have the governor's order, and how do you make that all work? Sometimes they can have different positions, and they represent different views and different ideas. So our job is to give both pieces of information to our community. But I think our priority has to be the health and well-being of everybody, because if we get out there too soon, then we run the risk of a relapse. And I think all of us who, either if you've had the flu or some type of illness, that relapse, that second time around, is always worse.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think, obviously recently there's conversations about now, if we are making the choice to start to reopen gradually, what are some of the things, what are some of the steps that we have to take to ensure that we are moving in a very methodical and thought out, well thought out plan and process. And, so is it having to wear masks? Is it
Yeah.
number of people. And so I feel like there's kind of a checklist, right, that we need to have before we just make those decisions.
Right, and I think we have to continue to have more testing. That's been a big issue, at least here in Texas and in Houston. Our ranking amongst other states when it comes to testing, we're still, almost at the very bottom, and that's not good. And I would really like to see us move up a little bit in those rankings before we start opening businesses back up. But yes, you're right. We have to also consider about moving forward. We have an order here now in Harris County that everybody has to wear a mask
Right.
and while you're in public places, and that's a new normal. It's very frustrating. If you're in the least bit claustrophobic like I am, it's a very uncomfortable place to be.
Right.
And I went to my first public event today because it was for first responders in my district, and just it's hot outside right now with a mask, and if you're at an outdoor event, it just makes things more frustrating. And trips to the grocery store are cumbersome because you've got to have your mask and your gloves and be mindful of your proximity to other people. And then when you come back home, you have to set everything in your garage or outside and wipe it down and then bring it in. So it's definitely changed the way we live, and we're, I guess, going to have to get used to some new normals for a while, and not being able to see loved ones and friends and colleagues. I mean, think about when we go back to maybe getting re-engaged with interim hearings and charges that we were supposed to be doing all this time. And how do you open up the Capitol? Do you open up the Capitol? And those are things that I know I'm on a working group committee that the Lieutenant Governor recently put together, and that's our responsibility, is looking at how we go back into an environment where we're conducting state business. And do you take public testimony? Do you do things like we're doing on Zoom or other types of mechanisms?
Right. No, and I think the work, that you're doing as part of that group is so critical. And at this time in a normal situation, it would be those interim charges, it would be those working groups that would be starting to form in preparation for session. And so can you share a little bit about, those largely just been put on hold, and it is really all about looking at the pandemic?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So
Yeah, so all of that's been put on hold. And you may recall Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker sometime back, it's been well over a month now that they put a halt to all the hearings, but there's a lot of work to do.
right.
And with what's happened with the price of oil, and our budget is based a lot on oil, and the servants tax, and the highway fund comes into play with that. So there are things that I think I'm anxious to get back to looking at those policies and budgetary issues to see what we need to do, have things in place so that when we go in January, we're ready to go, because there are going to be so many issues to tackle.
Absolutely. And I think, when we had our transportation forum, it was back in, I think, January,
Yeah.
February. And, it was, the world is your oyster, and it was all these different ideas that were coming out. And it's as if that never even happened now, because I've just told people, it's essentially a wipe of the policy board in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, new revenue streams. And no, it is all about just how are we going to survive and how are we going to work our way out of this. And one of the things I will say that is fortunate about the infrastructure industry is that it is often one of the top industries that helps reboot the economy, right? So
Mhm.
job stimulator,
Right.
and is it the investment of infrastructure that in long term and down the road helps support, God forbid, future disasters, and help us keep things moving, because we've been able to keep things moving, supplies, goods, things like that, our ports, because of the investments we've already made. So, that's a balance, though. It truly is.
Yeah, and what before all of this happened, one of our priorities was to go back in session and find ways, find revenue streams, and find areas in the budget that we could continue to fund all the progress that we made. For example, with education, HB3.
Right.
That was a big concern, is to continue to do that, and have the capacity to give our teachers a pay increase and put more money into our public education system. So now it's going to be about how do we crawl out of a deficit, and how bit large is that deficit going to be?
Right. And I think it's exposed some different things about education that perhaps we knew were there, but the vulnerability is extraordinary right now. So, for example, the technology piece and the access to internet and broadband and things like that for students that now have to do online learning. And how does a district, HISD, 150,000 students that rely on meals, or, things like that. So I am kind of curious, is there a pivot? Do you see a pivot in some of the educational policy priorities? Or is this were these always kind of at the top of the line?
Well, I hope that they remain at the top of the line, because in order for our state to continue to be, we've always been in a lead in the country on job creation and the economy and our growth and attracting talent and attracting businesses. We've always led in that effort. But if we want to have the skill set of the people to lead that, we have to have an education system that we invest in. So they go hand in hand. And my hope is that we can find ways to continue to fund all the wonderful things, that the components that came in with HB3. Right. We've seen the benefits. We've seen, just going into some of the schools or talking to teachers since that went into place, the morale booster, the initiatives that were placed in there that students and teachers and parents were looking forward to seeing implemented.
Right. I've had conversations with, kind of close friends and family, and there is this kind of wonder about just policy in general, and will we shift and focus more on kind of science, health, education, right? Will we start to really, we've come to value those things now, even more so in these last, few months now that we're in. And so and it's really not a question, it's just kind of a question that's out there, right? There aren't a lot of answers for everything right now, but it's things to be thoughtful about, that, how do we quote unquote prepare for something like this in the future? Is there a way to? And it's like nothing we've ever experienced. And so I think I think it will be, as a policy person, right, you just watching how this will impact what comes out of session will be tremendous.
Yeah. And you mentioned this earlier, it's broadband. Now, it's also shined a light on what many of us have said in the past, is that not everyone has access to Wi-Fi, to internet. And we've had great resources like Xfinity and others, and Comcast and AT&T, that have stepped up and created, hotspots, or have made investment in communities. But I think this is probably an area that there's going to be room to grow in broadband and everything that's digital. That industry is going to grow.
Right, absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about, your role, Senate Transportation Committee, Chairman Nichols, how, are there check-ins, are there conversations talking about things like, kind of TxDOT's work moving forward, the UTP? Is it kind of a wait and see, where we're still kind of gathering numbers and data to see where, like, as you mentioned, the highway fund, funding for Props 1 and 7, and where those, I was just kind of curious how those conversations are going.
Yeah, we've had regular calls with all the senators and the chairs, give an update. And so, thankfully the construction industry is still in business and working. So construction projects are still moving along, which I'm glad to see that, because we have many TxDOT projects in my district, and we want to make sure that those stay on budget and on track. And this is a good time for construction because there aren't a lot of people in rush hour right now. So, so that's not a concern. But when you talk about the servants tax, the rainy day fund, and what that impact has on the highway fund, that's concerning. And right now, I haven't seen any hard numbers on that, but I know that Chairman Nichols and folks at TxDOT are monitoring that. So hopefully soon we can be able to have a good look at that.
Right. Well, and as the comptroller, the numbers that come in kind of a month later, right? So
Right.
Your sales tax collection numbers, so we'll see what April looks like. We won't see that until, May or mid-May. So
Right.
yeah. And so that is challenging, but is the blessing in disguise a little bit that we're not in a session year and there is time to mobilize a little bit and perhaps plan before the start of a January session. So thinking of all the things that could be going on right now that would make this even more challenging. So.
Oh, I know. And I mean, as if, all this isn't enough. And then we have redistricting as well next session. So there's nothing worse than going in with no money, being in a hole. And, I don't know how long it's going to take us to get out of where we are with oil, because it's a global issue. A lot of this is out of our hands with what's happening with, with the Saudis and the Russians. And I know that people in our state are working on that, but it's not just Texas. It's a statewide and global approach that needs to be taken.
Right. And so you've always been such a great champion, education, health. Always, your name kind of is synonymous with those two things in my mind. And so can you share how perhaps, still, we're still in it, right? We're by no means on the other side or even close to it, but how has this pandemic shaped your thoughts for as you start to think about session as regards to kind of the health piece of it?
Yeah. And thank you for that recognition. I've been a strong proponent on health related issues and a big advocate for prevention, making sure that we have healthy food, nutritious food in our schools for kids to eat, and that we promote a well-rounded, healthy living lifestyle. I've never been one that's promoted any type of crash diet or this pill or that pill. It's a comprehensive approach. It's eating right and knowing how to read nutrition labels and getting enough exercise and making sure that your meals have enough nutrients in them. And if they don't, you may want to supplement with vitamins. I do that on a regular basis. But these are the things that I've talked about and advocated for so long. And I know that there are health disparities. Poorer people have less access to fresh fruits and vegetables and to grocery stores. Food deserts are very prominent in many of our neighborhoods. And what we've learned through this pandemic is that a lot of the people that have died were mainly because of underlying health issues. And those underlying health issues are things that could be prevented: heart disease, diabetes, obesity. If people have the right tools to address those problems, and I've been a strong advocate. I've filed many bills to have more physical activity in the schools, to have grocery stores and fruits and vegetables.
Right.
People who are on a fixed income might find it cheaper to go through the drive-thru and grab a Happy Meal. And that's, while that might be, fun to have because you get a prize in this box, but that really doesn't give a child all the nutrients. And also teaching parents how to cook with using, how to spice up and make things with vegetables taste good. And we partnered with, you know, different organization, I'm trying to think, Brighter Bites and things, organizations like that that have been good partners. But I think moving forward, you know, we have to take, and in fact, I mentioned this when I spoke at your gathering, the luncheon, about it's a very touchy subject. It shouldn't be, but it is, and one that can get partisan. But that is expanding things like Medicaid,
Right.
because we are only now one of 14 states in the entire country that hasn't done so, and that could boost about $8 billion into our Texas economy. And when we're facing some very, very tough times financially, that money could go a long way.
Really, yeah, no, and I think that's some of what I'm thinking with how does this really shift some priorities, and does it um, you know, squander some conversations, but does it absolutely open up the opportunity for other conversations that otherwise would not have happened or been looked at? And so
But
are we understanding the magnitude of investing in the kind of that full rounded quality of life conversation that that we talk about, but that we really need to work on better? And so even
yeah,
though, and so it's the nutritional piece, it's the health preventative piece, right? It's the, you know, I've said appreciation for our trails and our parks and our bikeways, right?
mm-hmm.
And understanding.
Absolutely. I've been using them. I can't go to my gym, which is, you know, a routine of mine, but I am using the trails, or, you know, jumping rope and doing free weights, and a lot of online yoga classes I'm doing.
Right.
But, you know, finding my own way to stay healthy as best I can. But back on the healthcare issue, I think the business community has a lot at stake in this, because you want a healthy workforce for generations to come.
Right.
And if we have, the more people that we have uninsured, when they go to the emergency room or something, we're all paying for that some way. We're paying that. We're footing that bill. And so I think it's in everyone's best interest to make sure that we have a way to drastically reduce the number of uninsured people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there will be you will see, in my opinion, a business community that's much more interested in perhaps some issues that they otherwise did not engage in previously, because they have felt the impact of issues that maybe at first glance did not seem as important, but now we're living through this, and we're all connected, right? Everything's connected, and we're all feeling that.
And we've seen the benefits when the business community gets involved in areas that maybe are a little out of their realm,
Right.
whether it's been on immigration issues or bathrooms, because they know that somewhere along the line, that's going to hurt their pocketbook. And
Right.
again, I mean, you want a healthy workforce. You want the best and brightest talent to recruit and to retain. But if they are unhealthy, if they've got the brightest mind, but they're missing work a lot because they have health issues,
Right.
because maybe they went most of their life without having preventive care and being able to go and get regular checkups, and that all comes to a head.
Right. Yeah. And talking about the business piece too, one of the things that TAG is looking at is how does this shape kind of that telecommuting, teleworking conversation that we
Mm-hmm.
had for a while. You know, HGAC has put out kind of commute solutions and opportunities for reducing congestion through those
Yes, yes.
I am curious to see if there's anything that happens at the state level that focuses on that. I think we're still too early, early in to know for sure, but I do think that will be part of a conversation, is some more policies the businesses implement, which allows employees to do more kind of the teleworking and the telecommuting. So, yeah.
I thank you for bringing that up, because I've thought about that. That so far we seem like we're able to function this way, or on conference calls. Maybe that's something to consider. You know, maybe it's 4 days a week, or you alternate, or you find some sort of alternative way.
Right. Yeah. And, looking at some of the other policies that we can look at is what are some of the skills that we're going to need?
I think we're going to have some sort of, I shouldn't say forum, but help people to get out of their comfort zone and maybe try another skill. We've
Right.
been putting out information for businesses that are hiring. We've done that on our social media. We've done that on our constant contact, and we're continuing to look for opportunities to make sure that people know that, okay, yes, you can file for unemployment. We've seen that's been a challenge, but also maybe there's another skill set you may want to try.
Right.
And businesses that maybe you didn't think about being engaged in, but there's an opportunity there, and that business is going to continue to grow. And as we prepare for situations like this, those businesses are going to flourish.
Right. Yeah. No, it will be the businesses that have the ability to pivot and to really adjust their sales to, to the current climate. So yeah, absolutely. And I would also ask, as the conversations happen about reopening, and those conversations, do you have any insight as to kind of when we talk about that opportunity to gather again? You talked about opening up the Capitol, not opening up the Capitol. If you could kind of fast forward to January, I mean, what would be kind of is there like an ideal situation? Or, I mean, I know it's hard, right? But if we had
I would love to be back to normal. And I know people been measuring the distance from on the Senate floor. Our chairs, I think from chair to chair, it's 6 feet, but from desk to desk, it's not. And if we're not through this, I mean, you may have to alternate members being on the floor, or maybe extend outside the rail. I don't know. But what I do know is that we work better when we can go up to our neighbor or somebody on the other side and have that one-on-one conversation. That way of communication is the best. It's the most meaningful. It's the most effective. But if you can't get to that person over there and talk to them during a debate, that's going to be difficult.
It is going to be difficult. I think those conversations are going to be very challenging. I mean, even the ability to go into a legislator's office, right, and have those meaningful conversations.
Yeah. Sure, we love when y'all come by. So.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a lot of what people are really trying to wrap their heads and their hearts around right now, is the uncertainty. And we know what this looks like right now, but we don't know what the other side's going to look like. And so
right.
And so we appreciate leaders like yourself that are out there trying to find and navigate, right, find a path forward. Because it's so interesting to hear you talk about measuring the distance between Senate chairs and all the things that people are already thinking about, that there's so many different layers to this, and everybody's trying to find their way. Can you share a little bit too? I know you mentioned some of the charitable organizations that you work with. I know we're about to launch a partnership with Kids Meals Inc. Where we'll be asking people to submit videos thanking frontline workers, and for every video we'll donate a meal. And so we're trying to keep that going, because the reality is that even as we ourselves go back and try to start being a part of reopening, there are going to be people that are still so hungry and need. And so I didn't know if there were any other organizations that are near and dear to your heart that I know that you might work with on a regular basis.
Well, of course, our food bank has been very successful here in Houston. They're in need of donations and volunteers, so that's one. And then the Brighter Bites, they have been very instrumental in getting fruits and vegetables into some low-income neighborhoods that just don't have access to that type of food, or in a food desert. So those are some of my favorites.
Okay, well, thank you. And I just want to thank you again for your time today. You always have a lot of energy. It's so interesting to me because I you never know when we do these, you never know people in their home, and it's been a month since sometimes we've had interaction, and it was very refreshing to see that it was still you, right? Very bubbly.
Likewise.
And so that's so appreciated, especially during these times. So thank you for all that you're doing. And we look forward to more conversations as we stay close to transportation conversations and other issues that are going to be, super, super critical as we figure our way out of this.
Well, thanks for taking the time to include me in your HomeSide Chats, and to the entire TAG community. I hope to see y'all soon. I appreciate your work, your advocacy, not just during the session, but post-session during the interim. Thank you. Stay healthy and safe.
Thank you. You too. That was HomeSide Chats. We hope you enjoyed the program. This series would not be possible without the partnership of our 2020 Mobility Partners. We appreciate your membership and your support. Stay tuned for more HomeSide Chats coming soon.